The Seattle Seahawks produced one of the most dominating performances in Super Bowl history. They put up 43 points on the Denver Broncos, the most a team has scored in the Super Bowl since Tampa Bay put up 48 on the Raiders in 2003. They also held the Denver offense to just 8 points while forcing 4 turnovers. That was a long time ago. Previously viewed as one of the premier franchises in the NFL, underwhelming draft picks and free agency hauls, coupled with the recent departure of Russell Wilson, have tarnished the Seahawks' reputation. John Schneider was among the NFL's best, overseeing a perennial contender as general manager of the Seahawks. From 2010 to 2020, the franchise made 8 playoff appearances, won 4 NFC West titles along with 2 NFC championships, and captured their first Lombardi Trophy. The core of the team was put together over the past 4 years under the guidance of General Manager John Schneider and Pete Carroll, who has the final say over personnel decisions. Following a tumultuous offseason, headlined by Seattle's decision to trade Wilson to Denver and release Bobby Wagner outright in a cost-saving move, Schneider has taken the brunt of the criticism in the media. As former Falcons coach Jerry Glanville once famously declared,
NFL, which stands for not for long when you make them calls.
Players on average last 3.5 years in the league, while most coaches and general managers average 4.5 years, according to a report from Business Insider. For several years, John Schneider seemed to be the only one at the NFL poker table who knew how to play the game. Analysts and experts slammed him for many of his draft selections early on, while players like Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner quickly emerged as Hall of Fame caliber talents. On most occasions, he got the last laugh, as he and Pete Carroll seemingly built a championship team in the blink of an eye. Over time, as Wilson and Wagner continued to will Seattle back to the postseason on a consistent basis, success in January became short-lived, with the roster around them in a complete state of decline. Since making a second straight Super Bowl in 2014, the franchise hasn't been back to the NFC Championship game and only managed to win 3 games total in 5 playoff trips. For those looking to pass the blame onto Schneider, Carroll and Wilson both deserve their criticism as well. On the sidelines, Carroll's conservative mindset in regards to strategy and clock management has had negative consequences. In a Week 2 game against the Titans, when the Seahawks took over with only 24 seconds remaining, after Carroll declined to use either of their last 2 timeouts while allowing Tennessee to run the clock down to tie the game. The Seahawks had a 3-and-out on their lone possession in overtime and ended up losing 33-30. Wilson didn't play well in the second half of the 2020 season, despite his strong play in the first half of the season. Seattle unleashed an all-out aerial attack. Throwing the ball early and often, Wilson put together the best statistical stretch of his career and emerged the clear front-runner for the MVP, an award he clearly wants for the implications it would have on his legacy. The wheels to Wilson's MVP campaign came off in a 44-34 loss to the Bills on November 8th. Wilson turned the ball over 4 times. The defense cratered, and Carroll sounded shell-shocked at what he'd just watched.
Well, what I would tell you is I don't recognize that game. We haven't seen us look like that, and it's a game that I don't have any place in my brain for it.
John Schneider made some upgrades to the offensive line and skill players around Wilson following the 2020 season. And from the outside looking in, it appeared that Wilson was as determined as ever through the 2021 season. After suffering a major finger injury in Week 5, Wilson underwent surgery and rushed his way back to the field ahead of schedule in Week 10. Through 14 games this past season, the 9-time Pro Bowler logged 3,113 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, en route to a 6-8 record as a starter. Despite his decent play, the offseason resulted in a divorce in which both sides contributed to. Russell Wilson wasn't happy, that much was clear. During their 3 seasons together as quarterback and play caller, Russell Wilson always backed Brian Schottenheimer.
First of all, I think Schotty would be a tremendous head coach in this game. I think he understands the game so well. He's got that great pedigree. I think obviously his dad, he's been around the game for so long. He's coached a lot of great quarterbacks, along the process, along the way. Starting off early on with Drew and Phil and those guys, and then a lot of other great ones along the way. So I think that he also understands the game extremely well. He's a great coach. He's a great teacher of the game. He's always motivated. He always works hard. Great family guy too as well. I love him as a person, and I think all the things that he can do, as a play caller, as confident as he is and all that, I think he'd be great. And I think he's a great leader of men too as well. So,
with Schottenheimer calling the shots, the Seahawks finished in the top 10 in scoring offense in each of his 3 seasons. Wilson had his 3 best seasons, averaging 35 touchdown passes, 7.8 yards per attempt, and posting a 107.2 passer rating in 48 games. He made 3 consecutive Pro Bowls and earned his first All-Pro selection after tossing 40 touchdowns in 2020. After Schottenheimer was dismissed in January 2021 for what reports cited as philosophical differences with head coach Pete Carroll, Wilson came to bat for his embattled former coordinator once again, telling reporters he wasn't in favor of the firing.
Yeah, no, if you ask me if I'm in favor of it, no. I mean, I think that, I guess, how do I answer this here? I think that, I think that it wasn't my decision to change Shotty, in other words. But I think that Coach Carroll made that decision. I think that, I trust his decision. But at the same time, obviously Shotty and I have been so close. I think he's going to be a tremendous coach. So like I said, somewhere else. But what I am in favor of is our football team getting better.
Wilson's relationship with Schottenheimer wasn't as rosy as the picture he painted. While they didn't hold ill will towards one another and maintain respect for each other, the Pro Bowl quarterback and his representatives pushed hard for a coordinator change after a disappointing finish to the 2020 season.
I think Shane's world and also kind of we're continually evolving.
According to people close to the situation, Wilson had grown tired of Schottenheimer from a play-calling perspective and wanted something fresh. As much as he benefited from his coaching, he didn't think they could coexist anymore in a football marriage. How did the quarterback-coordinator dynamic erode to this point? The Athletic reported that following 2 dismal offensive showings and losses to the Bills and the Rams, the situation started to boil over when Wilson met with coaches prior to a Thursday night football matchup against the Cardinals in Week 11. On a short week with limited preparation time, Wilson felt he had solutions for helping the Seahawks get their once unstoppable offense back on track. In the meeting, he outlined his own ideas for how to fix the offense. His suggestions were dismissed by Carroll and Schottenheimer, leading to Wilson storming out of the meeting room in frustration. A reminder to Wilson the Seahawks didn't see him the way he saw himself, as a player who had earned greater control over his situation, his future, and his legacy. Seattle managed to secure a 28-21 win over Arizona and won 6 of its final 7 games to secure an NFC West title. However, the offense wasn't the driving force behind this success. The passing game was bogged down, and Wilson and those close to him didn't forget about that meeting. Viewing himself as one of the NFL's elite quarterbacks and constantly talking about the importance of his legacy, Wilson wanted more influence over scheme and personnel decisions, but kept those desires behind closed doors. When coaches dismissed his suggestions, Wilson couldn't operate that way any longer. It wasn't personal, it was just business. Wilson's agent, Mark Rogers, helped craft the narrative around Wilson's displeasure from the Seahawks. For years, Rogers had reached out privately to reporters covering the team, with harsh criticisms for Seahawks management, especially Coach Pete Carroll. Wilson himself made it clear in interviews that he wasn't happy with his offensive line and his lack of input into roster decisions. He also pressed Carroll to shift toward a more pass-oriented offense. The Seahawks had become frustrated with the stream of leaks that constantly popped up, hinting at Wilson's displeasure or questioning of his future in Seattle, even as Wilson's production began to decline. At the root of his issues with Schottenheimer, Wilson wasn't pleased with the lack of tempo, wanting more no-huddle looks to read defenses and make audibles. Though he contributed to the team's struggles along the way, Wilson also expressed frustration about Seattle's inability to react effectively to opposing defenses. In a series of interviews after Super Bowl 55, Wilson aired his displeasures publicly. He was tired of being hit so much, pleaded for Seattle to add more star power to the roster, and in turn expressed interest in having more involvement in making personnel-related decisions.
How much do you have any say in what Seattle does offensively with free agents or draft picks?
I think that it's, I think that ultimately for me personally, I think that I want to be able to be involved, because at the end of the day, it's your legacy, it's your team's legacy, it's the guys you get to go into the huddle with, and at the end of the day, those guys you got to trust.
Though Carroll would later say the quarterback never talked to him about that. Carroll sided with Wilson's camp on the need for change and wanted to get back to running the ball, like they did during their Super Bowl years in 2013 and 2014. Carroll had already seen the let Russ cook movement backfire on Seattle, and he wasn't interested in going back in that direction. In his mind, 10 combined turnovers against Arizona, Buffalo, and Los Angeles during a 3-game stretch prior to the infamous meeting was enough evidence that the offense couldn't run through his quarterback. When Carroll later said that his relationship with Wilson was the best it's ever been, a source close to the quarterback described the coach as being full of it. The belief on Wilson's end was that Carroll did nothing more than tell Wilson what he wanted to hear. The trust was gone. Without trust, the two sides couldn't find a way to coexist behind the scenes, which made their public comments meaningless. It didn't matter that Carroll publicly dismissed trade rumors because they didn't align with the private conversations he and Wilson were having. It didn't matter that ahead of the team's home finale this past season, Wilson said that he hoped this wasn't his final game in a Seattle uniform.
For me personally, I hope it's not my last game, but at the same time, I know it won't be my last game in the NFL.
Wilson's finger injury 5 weeks into the 2021 season, his rush back to the field, and his poor play upon returning made this a complicated season to evaluate. But it didn't change Wilson's thinking that the Seattle Seahawks, as currently constructed, no longer provided Wilson the best opportunity to win Super Bowls and grow his legacy. What mattered was that both sides knew the partnership was ending. So much so that after a Week 12 loss at Washington, a source close to Wilson delivered a prophetic message to a reporter covering the team. End of an era. But Wilson's tense exchanges with coaches in that infamous meeting back in November 2020 stand out as the real turning point that marked the beginning of the end of his time with the Seattle Seahawks. Once you hit that subscribe button, give me a like, and stay tuned for the next one.